Right now, the Biden administration are considering a military strike directly against Iran, targeting their naval forces. For the most part, the conversation has been that Iranian-backed militia groups and the Houthi rebels were the targets. The U.S. and the U.K. were striking Houthis in Yemen. But now, following the death of 3 American soldiers and the injuries sustained by 34 U.S. soldiers, Joe Biden is considering a direct strike against Iran. Now, of course, Congress should authorize any act of war. They won't. And many are asking now, are we on the brink of World War III? I'm a bit tired of saying World War III. I actually think it's more apt to discuss internal politics and say civil war because that's an active conflict we're in. The World War III thing is a bit nebulous and difficult to understand. Now, if we go to war with Iran unilaterally, Biden just says strike, and he might. We were waiting all last night to hear if Biden was going to directly retaliate against Iran. If he does, it could be the inflection point, the shot heard around the world, which sparks a wave of conflict, ignites China, Venezuela, Russia ramps up its efforts. Or maybe, my friends, we are already in World War III. We won't know. Fighting had been happening all across Europe in various forms, political conflict, before World War I. But perhaps we know the start of World War I because that's when armies amassed and actually started making moves against each other as opposed to, skirmishes, regional conflict, politics, etc. In the U.S. Civil War, 1860, for 7 years up to the Civil War in 1861, there had been violence all across the country, but no armed factions marching towards each other. For some time now, over the past year or longer, with Vladimir Putin making his moves on Ukraine, with NATO forces actually being deployed to assist Ukraine, with U.S. special forces on the ground, the U.S. was directly involved in a war with Russia. Some suggested around the world this meant we were in World War III already. The Pope had made some kind of comments related to this. Many other world leaders did as well. However, this seems more like proxy war, which we have seen over the past several decades and even during the Cold War. I don't know if it's fair to say World War. Then the question becomes, what does World War III even mean? I don't know. Some suggest it's when Russia, China, and the U.S. finally go to the war. The big powers of the world are at war with each other. I don't think that's true. I think World War means the world is at war. So you have multiple factions across the planet fighting for various reasons. I mean, the Japanese and the Nazis, the axis of evil, but what did they have in common at all? And I don't believe they ever actually interacted. They may have traded weapons and things like this. I'm not a historian, so forgive me. But my understanding, they're on the other side of the planet. The world war could be specifically that Venezuela moves on Guyana. We then get China moving on Taiwan. Russia already in Ukraine. Israel, Gaza lighting up. With Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, etc., these countries are getting involved. The Houthi rebels, Iran. And when the U.S. strikes Iran, which is a very large country, that's when that's when the dam breaks. China's got 4 warships surrounding Taiwan. They have escalated their efforts. Venezuela is amassing troops, arguing that this territory in Guyana is actually theirs. I don't think that Guyana issue is the biggest and most pressing, but it shows every region of the planet will have war. Is that World War III? And what does that mean for you, my friends? Well, unfortunately, I hate to say it, there are a lot of people talking about how the U.S. Armed Forces, I believe specifically the Army and the Navy, removed the high school diploma requirement for joining up and enlisting. Many people are saying this is a strong sign the U.S. is planning to go to war. Maybe. Recruitment numbers are way down. The U.S. military is laughable at this point because of their weird woke policies that have been ridiculed endlessly. But I think there's something else here with the removal of the GED or high school requirement. Do you know what group of people will not have a high school diploma or GED? Criminal aliens, which are flooding the border in massive numbers with support from the Biden administration and Customs and Border Protection, engaged in a massive human smuggling operation. Perhaps Joe Biden, the Democrats are suggesting or proposing amongst themselves, you bring in as many fighting age males as possible, which is what conservatives have keep saying. And then, if and when war breaks out, you go to these groups and say, you want citizenship? Then you engage in service. Interesting concept, isn't it? To propose to these individuals that they take up arms against the enemies of the United States, they will be granted citizenship. I think that's very likely. But right now, the U.S. could be finding itself in a serious conflict. People need to understand, Iran is not Iraq or Afghanistan. If Joe Biden really does make a direct strike against Iran, we are talking about, I think it's fair to say, World War III. Right now, we are looking at a global strife, I guess you could call it, akin to a bleeding Kansas in the Civil War. There is regional conflict bubbling up. People are fighting. People are dying. It's bad. But despite the fact that we have boots on the ground in most of these countries, it is not yet gone full-scale war. If the U.S. strikes Iranian naval assets, that could be the dam breaking. During Donald Trump's administration, he called off a strike on Iranian targets. He said the amount of people that would be killed, it's not worth the retaliation. And so he said no. Perhaps the real issue is Trump knew if he were to strike Iranian targets, it would be a declaration of war against this country. And what would that mean for him? The president who started no new wars, rather remarkably avoiding this conflict with Iran. And he did kill Soleimani and did target many in the Middle East. No new wars, though. Old wars, not good. But here we are. The question we have then, what will this mean for the presidential election? I believe it's fair to say, before the year is done, before we get to the election, we will have full-scale war. Why? Well, my friends, I have zero faith in the Biden administration, in the in the political uniparty, and in the military-industrial complex, the establishment. They love war. They want war. If Donald Trump gets elected, they don't get war. What can they do? It's not so much that wartime presidents win elections. I don't think that'll save Joe Biden. In fact, I think it might hurt him. The theory goes that when a war breaks out, the president who's the incumbent tends to get massive support. There's fear in changing the administration in a time of war. But we've been in a state of war forever. And I wonder if Joe Biden does start a war, people are going to get mad about it. And they're going to say, I don't trust him to lead it. It may result in Trump actually winning. I don't know that the adage of wartime presidents winning would apply to someone as broken as Joe Biden. Then why do it? Because, like I said, if Donald Trump wins, they'll lose their chance. So here's the play. Start the war just before Trump gets in. Oh, Trump can come out and say, look what they've done. They've started a war. Sure. Yeah. And then Trump will inherit a new war. And he will have to contend with what that means. Oh, yeah. And he may try to negotiate and try and end these wars. And I hope he does. But it's going to be a challenge. My point is, Trump may be the guy to stop World War III if they are to start it. But the military-industrial complex, the deep state, et cetera, the establishment, they're thinking to themselves, starting the war gets us our war first. Trump may stop it, but at least we tried. The reason for war? Oh, we don't live in a comic book universe, my friends. These are not comic book villains who are simply twirling their mustache saying, we want war. Well, there's reasons for it. The liberal economic order, expansion of U.S. military operations, the silencing, essentially, or the crushing of the BRICS nations' economic growth, establishing a unified global order. That's what they've long called it. They want to maintain that as the world police. Stopping Iran is one way to go about doing that. Iran, they say it's a state sponsor of terrorism. And I think that's a fair point to a certain degree. But I think the bigger truth is, the reality here is that Iran refuses to accept or be part of the United States and the West's global economic order. And so is true of Russia. I don't know about China, but maybe. But you basically now have the NATO nations versus the BRICS nations. With Iran now aligned with BRICS, if this war were to kick off, I have to wonder what it would be like. Who would fire the first nuke and what would the target be? I don't believe in mutually assured destruction. I believe in the threat of mutually assured destruction as it pertains to someone nuking a major capital city or major city. But why would that happen? You know, people look to Hiroshima and Nagasaki and they're like, see, the U.S. nuked cities. Therefore, with intercontinental ballistic missiles and more powerful weapons, which I'm sure exist, hypersonics, if anyone were to nuke anyone else's city today, they would immediately retaliate by nuking the cities of their enemies. I don't see that happening. There was a reason for the U.S. to bomb Japan. It was to shut them down and show the power, a shock and awe campaign, essentially. There's nothing beneficial from that today, especially with the prospect of retaliatory nuclear strikes. But what that means, on the battlefield, nukes will be used. Why wouldn't they be? And you're not going to get China retaliating against the United States for nuking its naval fleet in the Pacific by striking a U.S. city. Wouldn't happen. It would. So this is the idea that people, if nukes are used, mutually assured destruction. No. If nukes are used on Beijing, perhaps. But what's the strategic value for the U.S. doing something like that? Fair point. Maybe if they could, they would. I don't know. But the reality is there are a wide array of nuclear weapons of varying degrees of power. And if there was a large fleet in the Pacific and the U.S. was like, we can take them out right now with one nuclear strike, they would. They absolutely would. And China would not respond by targeting U.S. domestic forces. They'd use nukes in their own fashion. We'll see, I guess. But I maybe we just hope and beg and pray that it never comes to that. And for that, the only thing I can say is vote Trump, I guess. You vote for Biden, you get war instantly. It's really amazing when I'm talking to the people I know who voted for Biden. And I'm just like, we're looking at the economic numbers, which Colbert is trying to claim are good. Nice try. We're looking at the economy. We're looking at rent. We're looking at industry collapse. We're looking at the migrant crisis and war. And I said, Joe Biden might go down in history as the worst president we've ever had. And it's funny to say that in front of someone I know who voted for him. Yeah, so the news comes on, and I'm watching Fox News, and they were showing a map of the Houthi rebel strikes, talking about the soldiers in Jordan who were killed, the U.S. soldiers who were killed. And, you know, this individual I know votes for Joe Biden's like, what happened? And I'm like, here we go, World War III. I wonder what they must be thinking, moving now into the election. The Daily Mail reports Joe Biden is weighing up launching strikes on Iranian military assets in the Persian Gulf after 3 Americans were killed. The president has demanded advisors present him with options on how to respond to the attack without dragging the U.S. into battle in the Middle East, Politico reports. Insiders revealed any revenge bombings will take place in the coming days as the commander-in-chief and military brass study a range of targets. Fears of war were sparked over the weekend when an Iran-backed suicide drone killed 3 American soldiers at a remote base near Jordan's border with Syria. Yeah, question is, how does that happen? Well, they apparently thought it was a U.S. drone coming in. They let it. And then it injured 34 and killed 3. You want to know what the craziest thing here? It's not this report from CNN. It's from last night. Biden's response to Jordan attack is likely to be powerful, but U.S. is wary of triggering wider war with Iran. Oh, I get that. It's this. Biden sparks outrage with reports that he may not attend ceremony honoring troops killed in Jordan. This man may be one of the worst, if not the worst president we have ever had. Of course, there's Buchanan, who was a feckless president who effectively watched the U.S. descend into civil war and did very little. You got Woodrow Wilson. Ooh, there you go. I mean, a lot of people think he may be the worst president ever. But it could be Joe Biden. Right now, AP News is reporting an Israeli strike in a Damascus area where Iran-backed groups operate caused casualties, Syria says. This is from yesterday morning. You look at these maps. I got to tell you, it's happening. I don't know if it matters that the U.S. strike Iran. I don't know that it matters. You take a look at the wide range of strikes that have already been happening, the battles that are already happening, and, it's wild. The U.S. and the U.K. are already bombing Yemen. U.S. troops have reportedly been in Yemen for some time now, though in January they denied it. And in December they said, yes, we have troops there. And then in January they denied it. Russia's already at war in Ukraine. That's not abating. And it's funny how they show the brink of World War III, and you can see the blue and red factions, the targets. Man, I don't know that I don't see an off-ramp. What is the scenario in which these things begin to calm down? Now, what's really fascinating is we have this story. Joy Reid apologizes after cursing on hot mic, starting another effing war. How weird. In this segment, Joy Reid was talking about a border deal and a border crisis. And then with her mic on, she said, quote, starting another effing war. Interesting. No one knows exactly what the comment was related to, but it appears to be related to Joe Biden starting another war. I think this shows you everything you need to know. Joy Reid is evil. I don't like saying evil, I don't say that lightly, but she is. Behind the scenes, she laments, fears, is angry about what may happen under the Biden administration, starting another effing war. But publicly, she does everything in her power to defend this administration and protect their what they're doing. Sure, I look at it like, a Nazi soldier complaining about going against Russia. He's still aligned with everything they're doing. Just think it's bad strategy. Joy Reid, behind the scenes, critical of what Biden may be about to get us into. Publicly, though, does everything in her power to defend and attack Trump and the right. I think this one's going to go crazy, and I genuinely fear where we are heading. Biden doesn't care about our troops. He doesn't care where we're going. China has deployed warships, according to Newsweek, surrounding Taiwan. They've already been flying jets overhead. We know that they are waiting for the moment to strike. If the U.S. strikes Iran and Iran retaliates in the immediate, China could move in instantly. And what's going to happen? Is the U.S. really going to decide to go into war 90 or so miles off the coast of China? People need to understand this. The U.S. wants to defend Taiwan, but it knows it can't. China has amassed all of this military power just on the other side of the Taiwan Strait, in China. What's the U.S. going to do? How far away are their military assets? I don't know, South Korea? Good luck. China will be able to continually amass powerful forces. The U.S. won't be able to defend Taiwan when China makes that move. But China doesn't want to spark the war, at least yet. But I fear that it is coming. We are on the brink of World War III, says Donald Trump. Why, he's right. From the Hindustan Times, NewsGuard certified. Huge political war cry has broken out in the United States after the death of 3 U.S. soldiers in Jordan. Pinning the blame on Joe Biden, Donald Trump said, he is leading us, quote, on the brink of World War III. Yeah. Our country cannot survive with Joe Biden as commander-in-chief. The GOP presidential primary frontrunner, he's the presidential frontrunner. Biden has blamed radical Iran-backed militant groups for the attacks. He has vowed to hold those responsible for America's deaths and injuries, to account at a time and in a matter of our choosing. Trump posted on Truth. 3 years ago, Iran was weak, broke, and totally under control. Thanks to my maximum pressure policy, the Iranian regime could barely scrape $2 together to fund their terrorist proxies. Then Joe Biden came in and gave Iran billions of dollars, which the regime has used to spread bloodshed and carnage throughout the Middle East. This attack would never have happened if I was president, not even a chance. Just like the Iranian-backed Hamas attacks on Israel would never have happened. The war in Ukraine would never have happened, and we would right now have peace throughout the world. Instead, we are on the brink of World War III. I agree. I really do. I think if Trump was president, we wouldn't be here. There's a reason why war was escalating in Ukraine up until Obama left. And there's a reason why it kind of stopped. I mean, the conflict simmered off, whatever. Slowed down under Trump. Kind of wild. Near the end of the Obama administration, I went to Ukraine and I watched the unrest. I filmed it. I was there personally. I saw the toppled statue of Lenin. Then they stormed the president's house. He fled to Russia. Conflict and chaos consuming Ukraine. Well, the president there would not give NATO what they wanted. And then Trump got elected. It stopped. They were calling it a civil war in Ukraine. Trump got elected. And then it stopped. I visited Ukraine during the Trump administration, beginning of 2017, I believe. And I was talking to a friend in the country, and they said, no, we don't call it civil war anymore. Like, don't call it that. It's just regional conflict now. It was not that big a deal. Russia had mostly backed off. Why? Because Donald Trump had backed off the U.S. pressure in Ukraine, the NATO pressure. No new wars. Abraham Accords. Peace deals. Economics. But the liberal economic order, the powerful U.S. and Western interests, don't like that. They want brute force control. It's really simple. Donald Trump's strategy was, guys, we're all going to be rich. We're going to let you have what you want. For us, we want America to be wealthy. Secure our borders, build our manufacturing base, bring our jobs back, make Americans better off, and you guys do your thing. And this works for a lot of countries. You know, Russia, for instance, says, okay, we don't got NATO breathing on our back in Ukraine. We're chill. And they chilled out for years. 4 years. Joe Biden gets in. What does he do? We will crush you with an iron fist. Do as you're told. Doesn't work. Here's what I think. I really do think this. I think that Donald Trump has these conversations with intelligence agents and assets. He gets in. He gets elected, even before he's elected. And they say, we have to crush them. They must know that we are more powerful and will always be. And Trump said, this is insane. We are losing control here. Our enemies are growing rapidly. We are not going to be able to stop the development in China due to failed policies. What can we do? Secure our borders, bring our jobs back, build up a manufacturing base, help the working class, no new wars, make America stronger. Then, when American hegemony collapses, we'll at least be secure and comfortable, strong and safe within the United States. Makes sense. And they said, we would rather burn the world down than let anyone oppose us. You know, as I think a bunch of these people in the United States cut backroom deals with China. That in the event of an economic collapse, they will be secure in their wealth in communist China. I suppose we'll see. I suppose we'll see how this goes down. Wow, man. It's kind of crazy. I don't know if there will ever be a shot heard around the world moment. I mean, the U.S. and the U.K. already bombed Yemen unilaterally. There's no congressional approval for this. If we strike Iran, Iran may retaliate. And the reality is we could be in World War III without ever actually seeing any kind of declaration. We could be sleepwalking into World War III right now. And someone may say in the future, October 7th was the start of World War III, when Hamas attacked Israel, sparking a chain of events. Today, it's just the Israeli-Gaza war. But now the Houthis are blocking Red Sea traffic. Iran is now getting involved. The U.S. is going to retaliate. This could spiral out of control fast. So I hope you're all paying attention, and I hope you're ready. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.